It's DFS season here at Club Fantasy. We're covering every single NFL playoff game and breaking them down for your DFS Showdown slates. We're going to be focusing on in this video, the Buffalo Bills versus the Baltimore Ravens, one of the most exciting matchups of this playoff weekend. Let's get into it. Oh, Captain, my Captain, this is Club Fantasy's DFS Showdown slate video. I am your host, Joshua Hudson. You can find me at the One Hudsonian. He is our DFS expert, Austin Amandolia. You can find him at Austin_FFL. Austin, I know we talked a little bit before about how much we love the idea of how exciting Washington and Detroit is. This has all the makings, the Ravens versus the Bills, of an absolute slugfest. In all honesty, like two MVP candidates going at it. I love it, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, this could definitely end up being like an iconic matchup that we remember the way we remember 13 seconds from a few years ago, right? Like it could have that kind of fame with it after this weekend.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait. All right, Austin, tell everybody how they can play these showdown slates against us here at Club Fantasy.
Yes, we have a league on DraftKings. You can follow the link in the show description to join that league. We will be running a contest for all 4 games this weekend. We also have a Saturday slate and a Sunday slate contest. You have 6 ways to play with us, play against us. $2 entry fee. They're a fun way to get some practice and to see if you can be better than us.
All right. And of course, don't forget, get your championship swag with Trophy Smack. That's trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. Show some love and help us support women in sports. Get all of your championship gear from trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. They have belts, rings, trophies, wall smack. All of it is customizable. Show off that championship wins. Take some of this money that you're winning from DFS, put it towards a new belt. And from now until January 31st, you can use promo code WOFF, WOFF, at checkout with the purchase of a belt or trophy and get yourself a free championship ring. That's right. Get that bling and show it off. trophysmack.com/WOFF, WOFF. All right. Our first category is Captain Chalk. These are the chalky captains that everyone is likely to pick because you know the names and they are just that damn good. There's a lot of names that you know that are just that damn good in this matchup. So, Austin, I need to know why you decided to start with Josh Allen.
Yes, I started with him because they're in Buffalo and because he is the MVP favorite. And so I think that people will look at that and say, oh, he is going to be the best player in this slate. And I personally am probably not going to do it that much because I do think that the Ravens defense will cause troubles for the Bills offense. We saw Josh Allen not really hit his ceiling last week. He still played fine, but it took him a second to get going against the Denver Broncos. We saw him struggle a little bit until the second half, and then everything just went crazy from there. So I don't know that I'm going to play him a ton, but I think in small field contests, it's totally fine to play Josh Allen. It's also like kind of a coin flip between him and Lamar Jackson of which quarterback you want in the captain slot, because both have very similar upsides. Both can score 40 points in any given game. So I think either one is fine, but I do see Josh Allen being the most rostered captain on the slate.
All right. And with that, let's transition to the next category, the Mutineer. These are going to be your contrarian captain choices that offer variety and upside in your larger tournaments. Let's talk the big dogs with the Ravens, and we'll start with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, so part of the reason I like Lamar Jackson as a contrarian option is he has been better statistically in almost every way than Josh Allen has this year. Point blank, which is why I think he should be the MVP. Throwing that out there. I also just think people are going to play a little bit into the home field advantage, but I think this Ravens team is going to be ready to show up. They have been firing on all cylinders down the stretch. I really like that. I also think that the way that they utilize Lamar Jackson against the Steelers is going to be indicative of how they continue to use him down the slate. They ran about 1 billion zone reads against the Steelers last week. They were like, all right, now's the time. Lamar, go win this damn game. And I think they're going to do the same thing this week against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, and playing in Buffalo this time of year, you kind of need to run it a lot. Because throwing the ball, wind, snow, rain, sleet, whatever the conditions are going to be, not going to be a lot of fun. And we know how much Lamar Jackson can get done on the ground. But speaking of running the football, he's got a guy behind him that rushed for over 1,900 yards this year and just put up another 186, I believe, in the wild card round. Mr. Derrick Henry.
Yes, and Derrick Henry did really well against the Bills the first time that these two teams met. I believe he scored 2 touchdowns in that matchup. And this was a game where the Ravens just played from ahead the entire time. No, sorry, he scored 1 touchdown, but he ran for 199 yards. His other touchdown was a receiving touchdown. So pretty good day for Mr. Derrick Henry against the Buffalo Bills. Now, that was a while ago, but we know he has a subset no matter what. He gets better as the game goes on. And we know that in these conditions, he is going to be heavily relied on. And so I think that if you are betting on this game hitting the under, which I think is a reasonable thing to do, that playing Derrick Henry in your captain spot is going to be one of the easiest ways to get leverage on the field.
Yeah, for topic of conversation's sake, that first matchup against Buffalo obviously did not have starting linebacker Matt Milano. He has since come back. Their run defense has gotten a lot better. Of course, on the flip side of that, Derrick Henry has 4 straight games rushing for at least 138 yards. I mean, seriously, I was told 30-year-old running backs couldn't do anything. What are we doing, people? Like, goodness gracious, Derrick Henry, a man amongst boys. All right, our next category, the first mate. Every captain needs a reliable crew. These are going to be your standouts that maximize your lineups. Let's stay on that Ravens side. Let's start with Mark Andrews, Mr. Reliable for one Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and so when Zay Flowers went out, we saw last week that the Ravens really started to rely more on the tight ends, and Mark Andrews is among them. Didn't have quite the ceiling target share that we might expect from him, but that's also because Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry ran the heck out of the ball last week. So if you're playing this game as a back and forth affair where they're going to need to pass the ball to stay involved, I think Mark Andrews is going to be a key part of that. Also, Buffalo is not good against pass catchers in general. They are one of the worst teams against receivers. Mark Andrews effectively functions as a receiver in this team. So I think he's definitely a great person to have in your lineup, particularly if you're playing a Lamar Jackson captain lineup. You just need to have Mark Andrews. I think you also need to have Rashad Bateman, who's my other player for this category, because Rashad Bateman did get a significant uptick in target share once Zay Flowers went out of this offense, and he's been playing pretty well, to be honest. Like he has started to kind of prove why people were really interested in him. I don't think he's at the ceiling that people were excited about or were hoping for, but he still has kind of helped prove why there was interest in him from a fantasy perspective. So I think having both of these guys in your lineup with Lamar Jackson is going to be key if you're playing it as a back and forth matchup like that.
Yeah, and as of this recording, it does seem like Zay Flowers will miss this game. So I think that both of these two become very optimal. Now, Austin, I want to throw you a quick curveball here. If for some reason Zay Flowers ends up being active for this game, does that change your opinion on either of them? And what is your opinion then on Zay Flowers?
I think I would play some Zay Flowers, but I would probably still lean Rashad Bateman just because the nature of the injury that sent Rashad Bateman out, being with the knee, is very critical for how receivers get their bread. I think we won't know how good he's able to cut until we see it. And that's a key way that he gets open in these matchups. He's not like a speed guy where he just needs to get down the field. Like he's an articulate route runner. And so if he's not able to dig in as much because of that knee injury, that makes me nervous. And without having seen it, I will shy away, but I will still play it some because I want to bet on the talent there because he is still a good player. So it's a little bit both and. I'm not going to go overboard, but it's worth a shot every now and then.
No, makes sense. Figured I'd ask. All right. Next category is the deck scrubbers, the cheap punt plays that can make a lineup based on one play or limited opportunity. You know, we haven't really talked much about Buffalo Bills since Josh Allen in the first category here. So let's talk a little bit about Dawson Knox, who really has become the more reliable tight end option over, second-year former first-round pick Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, and at minimum, he has been as consistent as Dalton Kincaid, and he's at a much cheaper price point. And so that's part of the appeal here because there's a lot of expensive players on the slate. And so you're going to need to be able to get cheap elsewhere. Dawson Knox provides that upside. We see Dawson Knox continue to get targets in the red zone. And it's one of those things like it's really hard to predict which receivers are going to get it from Josh Allen. But Dawson Knox seems to be actually the most consistent one. It's not like a super ceiling performance, but he's going to get a few targets a game, and he's going to be in the running for a touchdown almost every week.
Yeah, it almost feels like if you could build a lineup with just Josh Allen as captain and the rest Baltimore Ravens, it almost feels like that's the most optimal way, just simply because
I think it's interesting
of all of the options in Buffalo. Like nobody really pops, nobody really stands out. But like you mentioned with Dawson Knox, like there's still that opportunity because he does trust them. They look for him in the end zone. He does score touchdowns, and he averages a greater depth of target, if I'm not mistaken, than Dalton Kincaid. I know he has a higher yards per reception. But staying on the backup tight end train, let's talk a little bit about Isaiah Likely because the Ravens do run more 12 personnel, especially when they're down a wide receiver, which they will likely be in this game. No pun intended, with Zay Flowers.
Yeah, I was going to say, you called him a backup, but he's kind of not a backup. He's really he's part of the offense. He comes in pretty frequently too, even when they aren't playing 12 personnel. Well, whenever they aren't lining up in what you would think of as 12 personnel, like it looks like an 11 personnel set because they have Isaiah Likely in the slot, right? But it is 12 personnel. So he gets on the field a lot. He is way cheaper than Mark Andrews, but I think it's interesting to play both of them in this matchup because I think people are going to do the same thing that they'll do with Travis Kelce and Noah Gray and go one or the other. But going both is an interesting way to get different.
All right. One more time. You can play these DFS Showdown slates against us here at Club Fantasy. Hit the direct link in the description of the video, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast channel. Our final category, the Kraken. These are going to be the lineup traps that sink the ship. Let's start with playing this only as a shootout. I love how you don't ever choose players. You just give scenarios. So let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting scenario to me. So I talked about that week 4 game. I want to come back to it. Baltimore destroyed Buffalo in week 4. They won 35-10. They did it behind Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson still had 2 passing touchdowns, and I think he ran for a touchdown as well in that game. It would not surprise me if they ran away with it. Now, the difference here is that week 4, they were in Baltimore. Now they're in Buffalo. But the Baltimore Ravens offense, I think, is clearly able to outmatch the Buffalo Bills defense. I don't feel as certain about that on the flip side. I feel like the Baltimore Ravens defense is a much tougher match for the Bills offense than vice versa. And so I do see a scenario where this gets up. And so the reason I want to bring this up is to emphasize playing Derrick Henry in your captain spot is interesting. Not playing Josh Allen in every single lineup you play is interesting because there is a potential that this Ravens defense just shows up and is able to slow down the Buffalo Bills.
All right. Well, on the flip side to that, not playing both quarterbacks.
Yeah, so this is where I get to have my cake and eat it too. And that's the kind of the beauty of DFS is you get to bet on both sides of it and you get to try different things. And that's kind of what you should be doing. You should take a portfolio approach and tell different stories so that you don't get just fixated on one scenario and then all of your lineups lose because that one scenario didn't happen. The other scenario I do see happening is it being a shootout, as Vegas thinks it will be given the over-under. And if so, both quarterbacks could easily score 30-plus fantasy points on DraftKings. And having both of them in your lineup is hard from a salary perspective. And I think people won't want to do it because of that. But if they're going to score 60 to 70 combined points, having them both in your lineup, it's actually probably going to be really crucial to getting an optimal lineup.
I like it. All right, one more time, head over to trophysmack.com/WOFF. That's WOFF. Help us continue to support women in sports by using that direct link to get all of your championship swag. And a friendly reminder, from now until January 31st, use promo code WOFF, WOFF at checkout. Get yourself a free championship ring with the purchase of a belt or trophy. He is Austin at Austin_FFL. I am Josh at the One Hudsonian. You, of course, can follow Club Fantasy at Club Fantasy FFL, the URL, clubfantasyffl.com. We're covering all of the NFL playoff games from a DFS perspective. So be sure to like this video and subscribe to either our YouTube feed or any of the podcast networks that you are listening to us on. It's our last one for the divisional round, Austin. Sayonara, Captain.